was a quiet Saturday morning by the lake, the kind where the water looked like glass and birds sang in the tall trees. I had just finished unpacking groceries into my small cabin when a knock rattled my door. Standing there was a woman in her late 50s, bleach blonde hair pulled tightly into a bun, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and a clipboard clutched to her chest. "Good morning," she chirped in a voice that sounded fake sweet but carried a sharp edge. "I'm Karen, president of the Lakeview HOA. I just came by to welcome you and give you the paperwork to join our community association." I frowned, confused. "Thanks, but I'm not interested. My property isn't part of an HOA. Karen laughed, a clipped sound that felt rehearsed. "Oh, honey, everyone around here is part of the HOA. It's mandatory. Dues are $200 a month, and of course, we have a long list of rules to keep things orderly. No trailers, no boats left uncovered, and no loud gatherings. You'll need to sign today." I crossed my arms. "Karen, this land has never been under an HOA. I own it outright, and I'm not signing anything." Her smile cracked. "We'll see about that." She spun on her heels and stormed off down the driveway. The next morning, I was outside stacking firewood when I heard the unmistakable wail of sirens. A sheriff's cruiser rolled up, lights flashing, and 2 deputies stepped out. Karen was right behind them, arms flailing as she pointed at me like I was a criminal. "There he is," she barked. "He refuses to follow HOA rules. He's illegally squatting on this property, and I demand you remove him." The deputies looked between us confused. "Sir, can we see some ID and proof of residency?" I calmly handed them my license and the deed to the property. "I've owned this land for years. She doesn't have any authority here." Karen's jaw dropped. "That can't be. He's lying. Everyone here answers to me." The deputies exchanged a look. Then one of them turned to her. "Ma'am, this property isn't under any HOA jurisdiction." "You can't make him join." Karen's face flushed red. "This is outrageous. I'm the HOA president. I own this neighborhood." That's when I decided to drop the bombshell. I leaned against the porch railing and said calmly, "Actually, Karen, you rent your house from me. I'm your landlord." The silence that followed was so thick you could hear the wind rustling the pine trees. Karen's mouth opened, then closed again like a fish gasping for air. "You? What?" I nodded. "Check your lease agreement. The name on it is mine. You've been paying me rent every month while trying to bully me into your fake HOA. The deputies smirked, clearly enjoying the twist. One of them said, "Well, looks like this situation just turned upside down." Karen stammered, But, I'm in charge. I make the rules." "Not on land you don't own," I said firmly. "And as your landlord, I strongly suggest you stop harassing me or anyone else around here, or you'll be looking for a new place to live." Karen's face went pale. She muttered something under her breath, turned and stomped back toward her house. The deputies chuckled, thanked me for my time, and drove off. That day, word spread fast around the lake. Neighbors who had been silently dealing with Karen's harassment for years came by to shake my hand and thank me. Turns out she had been terrorizing the community with her fake HOA claims, charging people fees that had no legal standing. Assured them I'd be keeping a closer eye on things, and if Karen kept up her antics, her lease renewal would be reconsidered. For the first time in years, the lake community felt peaceful again. And Karen, she never knocked on my door again. For a few days, life around the lake was calm. I thought maybe Karen had finally learned her lesson after the humiliation of discovering I was her landlord. But Karen wasn't the type to give up. She thrived on control, and the idea of being powerless made her seethe. One evening, as I sat on the porch sipping coffee, I overheard her shrill voice drifting through the trees. She was in her yard, surrounded by a few neighbors, holding yet another one of her so-called HOA meetings. I don't care what he says, Karen hissed, pointing toward my cabin. He thinks he can embarrass me, but I run this neighborhood. If he won't join the HOA, we'll make his life miserable until he leaves. A few of the neighbors shifted, uncomfortably glancing around as though afraid of being caught listening. One woman whispered, "But he's your landlord, Karen." "You can't really do anything to him." Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. "Landlord or not, he's just a tenant like the rest of us. If we stick together, we can push him out." The next morning, I discovered her first attempt. My driveway had been blocked with 2 golf carts parked side by side. A handwritten note taped to one of them read, "HOA rule, no outsiders allowed." I chuckled, shook my head, and called the towing company. Within an hour, the carts were gone. Karen stood at her window, glaring daggers at me as the tow truck hauled them away. Later that week, she tried again. This time, she called the county zoning office, claiming my cabin was an illegal structure. 2 inspectors arrived, clipboards in hand, asking to see permits. Luckily, I had every document filed neatly in my office. When they saw everything was perfectly legal, they shook their heads in frustration. Honestly, one inspector muttered, "We've been getting complaints from this woman for years. You're not the first she's tried to sabotage." That's when I realized Karen wasn't just a nuisance. She was a long-term parasite on the entire community. The turning point came during a neighborhood barbecue hosted by one of the families. I decided to attend, unsure of how people felt. After the drama with Karen, to my surprise, as soon as I arrived, people clapped me on the back and handed me a plate of food. Finally, someone stood up to her. One man said, "She's been charging us HOA dues for years, but we never see where the money goes." A woman added, "We were too scared to question her. She threatens fines, calls the cops, even tells people she can evict us. But now, we know she's got no power." I looked around the circle of tired faces, neighbors who just wanted peace. That's when an idea struck me. "Listen," I said firmly, "Karen is just a tenant, my tenant. If she keeps harassing people, I'll have legal grounds to evict her. But I need your help. Document everything, every threat, every fake rule, every dime she demands. If we stand together, she won't be able to bully anyone anymore." The neighbors agreed eagerly. That night, for the first time, the lake community felt united, not under Karen's rule, but against her. When Karen found out people were siding with me, she went ballistic. She stormed into my driveway one evening, her face red with fury. "You all think you've won," she screeched. "This is my neighborhood. These people need me. You can't just take that away." I stood my ground, calm but firm. "Karen, you don't own this land. You don't own these houses. You don't own the people here. And if you keep this up, you'll lose the one thing you do rent from me, your home." Her voice cracked as she spat back, "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I dare," I said. "Keep testing me." Karen stomped away, muttering under her breath. But deep down I could see it. Fear had finally begun to creep into her eyes. That night, as the moon reflected across the lake, I knew the battle wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to quit easily. She would fight tooth and nail to cling to her illusion of power. But this time, she wasn't fighting just me. She was fighting the entire community, and sooner or later, she was going to lose. The days after our confrontation were strangely quiet. Karen no longer stormed into my yard or knocked on my door with her clipboard, but I knew better than to think she had given up. Karen wasn't retreating. She was plotting. My suspicions were confirmed when, a week later, I received a letter in the mail. It was a legal summons. Karen had filed a lawsuit. According to her complaint, I was unfairly interfering with the Homeowners Association and harassing her as a tenant. She was demanding damages, and get this, the court forced me to recognize her HOA authority. I actually laughed out loud reading it. But instead of stressing, I picked up the phone and called my attorney. "She doesn't have a case," he assured me. This isn't the first time someone's tried to invent an HOA. Bring the deed, the lease, and the complaints from your neighbors. We'll bury her in her own lies. Court day arrived, and the small town courtroom was buzzing with neighbors who had shown up to watch. Apparently, everyone wanted to see Karen finally face consequences. She strutted in wearing an oversized blazer, stacks of binders in her arms, and a smug grin plastered on her face. She didn't even look at me. When the judge entered, Karen wasted no time. She launched into a rambling speech about how she was the elected president of the Lakeview HOA and how I was destabilizing the neighborhood by refusing to obey her rules. She slammed down a binder full of papers. Here are the bylaws, Your Honor. Everyone here is required to pay dues and answer to me. The judge adjusted his glasses and flipped through the documents. After a few minutes, his brow furrowed. Mrs. Karen, these aren't legally filed anywhere. These look like something you typed up on your home computer. Karen's face twitched. Well, they should be legal. The community needs structure, and I provide it. My attorney stood. Calmly, he presented the deed to my land, the official county records showing no HOA ever existed, and finally, a stack of written statements from nearly every neighbor describing years of harassment and false fees. The courtroom murmured. Karen's smugness melted away. The judge looked sternly at her. Mrs. Karen, you are not the president of anything. You've been defrauding your neighbors, misrepresenting authority you don't have, and wasting this court's time. Karen stammered, But, I'm in charge. I always have been. No, the judge said firmly, and if you continue this charade, you could be facing fraud charges. Case dismissed. The gavel slammed. The room erupted. Neighbors clapped. Some even laughed, while Karen's face turned crimson. She shoved her binders back into her bag and stormed out, muttering that this isn't over. But everyone knew it was. Outside the courthouse, several neighbors approached me, shaking my hand. You saved us all, one said. She would have kept draining us forever if you hadn't stood up to her. I smiled. She saved herself. The eviction for now. But if she tries one more stunt, she's out. This community deserves peace. That evening back at the lake, the mood was different. Kids played by the shore, couples grilled by their decks, laughter carried across the water. For the first time in years, people felt free. Free from Karen's fake rules and endless threats. As for Karen, she sulked in her rental, blinds drawn, avoiding everyone. Her reign was over, and she knew it. And me? I leaned back on my porch, watching the sunset reflect across the lake. The battle had been messy, but worth it. Karen had learned the hard way. You don't mess with your landlord, and you don't build an empire on lies, because eventually it all comes crashing down. After losing in court, Karen disappeared for a few days. No HOA meetings, no clipboard patrols, no shouting at kids for riding bikes too fast. The lake was eerily peaceful. But peace and Karen never lasted long. One morning I opened my mailbox and froze. Sitting on top of my mail was a local newspaper, front page headline, local woman harassed by power-hungry landlord, HOA president. Silenced in court, there she was, smiling pitifully in a posed photograph, hands folded like she was some tragic martyr. The article painted me as a greedy landlord trying to strip her of community rights. She claimed I had bullied her, silenced her voice, and left the neighborhood in chaos. By noon, a local news crew showed up at the lake. Karen was on her porch, crocodile tears streaming down her face as she wailed into the camera. They're trying to take everything from me. All I ever wanted was order and safety. Now I'm being threatened with eviction because I dared to care. Neighbors stood in small groups, watching the spectacle. Some rolled their eyes, others whispered angrily. A few shook their heads in disbelief. When the reporter turned to me for comment, I simply held up a folder of documents. The truth doesn't need a performance. She lost in court because she lied. Ask the neighbors who really paid the price. Several neighbors stepped forward, one by one, telling stories of Karen's bullying, fake fines, harassment, even threats of calling Child Protective Services on families who wouldn't pay her fake HOA dues. By the time the segment aired that evening, the narrative had flipped. Karen wasn't a victim anymore. She was exposed. But being humiliated on TV only pushed Karen deeper into desperation. Late one night, I heard rustling outside my cabin. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out to find Karen crouched near my porch, holding a can of spray paint. She had already scrawled "Slumlord" in red across the side of my wood siding. "Karen," I barked. She spun around, startled, paint can slipping from her hand. You ruined my life. I'm taking back control." Before I could respond, several neighbors who had heard the commotion rushed over. Phones were out, cameras recording. Karen froze like a deer in headlights. One of the neighbors, a woman she had bullied for years, stepped forward. "You've done enough damage, Karen. This community is done with you." Karen's face crumbled. She looked around, realizing she had no more allies, no more power, no more lies to hide behind. I sighed, shaking my head. This was your choice, Karen, and now it has consequences. The sheriff's deputies arrived minutes later. Yes, the same ones she had once tried to sick on me. They took one look at the vandalism, the witnesses, and Karen's trembling hands covered in red paint. She was placed in handcuffs, muttering weakly, "I was only protecting the neighborhood." The vandalism was the final straw. I filed for eviction, and the process moved quickly thanks to her repeated violations of the lease. On moving day, the lake was alive with quiet anticipation. Curtains twitched as people peeked out, watching Karen load her things into a rusty SUV. No one offered to help. No one said goodbye. She stomped around, slamming car doors, muttering curses at anyone who glanced her way. Finally, she turned to me. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "This lake will fall apart without me." I met her glare calmly. "The lake will finally heal without you." She drove off in a cloud of dust, her reign of terror finally over. That evening, the community gathered on the shore. Families grilled food, kids played in the water, laughter echoed across the lake. For the first time in years, there was no fear of fines, no clipboard inspections, no fake HOA rules hanging over their heads. One of the older residents raised a toast, to peace, and to the man who reminded us we don't answer to Karen. Glasses clinked, cheers rose, and for the first time, the lake felt like a real community. Leaned back, watching the sunset ripple across the water. Karen had tried everything: police, lawsuits, media, even vandalism. But in the end, she lost everything because she couldn't give up control. And as her old rental house sat dark and empty across the water, I knew one thing for certain. Karen was gone, and she was never coming back. For weeks after Karen's eviction, life at the lake blossomed. The air felt lighter, neighbors smiled more, kids laughed freely without someone barking rules at them. The lake was alive again, but peace never lasts forever. Not with someone like Karen still out there. One morning, I woke to a fresh letter taped to my front door. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. "You can kick me out, but you can't silence me. I'll be back, and when I return, you'll regret ever crossing me. K." I crumpled the letter, shaking my head. It wasn't surprising. Karen wasn't the type to disappear quietly into the night. She needed control like she needed air. Still, I wasn't about to let fear creep back into the community. That evening, I called a meeting at the Lakeside Pavilion. Nearly everyone showed up. "She's gone," I told them, holding up the letter. "But she's still trying to haunt this place. She might come back, maybe with lies, maybe with tricks. But we're stronger now. We stand together." The neighbors nodded. Some looked nervous, but most looked determined. One man raised his voice. "She divided us for years. Never again." For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about Karen. It was about teaching a community to stand up for itself. But Karen wasn't finished. 2 weeks later, a stranger arrived at the lake, a slick-looking man in a suit, clipboard in hand. He knocked on doors, introducing himself as a representative of Lakeview Property Management. He claimed there was a new HOA forming, one that required everyone to sign, but the neighbors were ready this time. One woman laughed in his face. "Nice try, Karen. We know she sent you." The man flustered, packed up quickly, and left. By the time I confronted him at the end of the road, he admitted it. Karen had hired him to intimidate us into thinking the HOA was back. I looked him square in the eye. "Tell Karen if she sets foot on this property again, she'll be trespassing, and next time it won't end with eviction. It'll end with charges." That night, as the lake shimmered under the moon, I sat on the porch reflecting. Karen had lost her home, her fake authority, and her reputation. But she hadn't lost her obsession. She was out there somewhere, still clinging to the idea that she ruled this place. The difference now, she was fighting a united community, and that was a battle she could never win. It was a warm Saturday afternoon when the sound of shouting echoed across the lake. I stepped onto my porch and froze. Down by the entrance road, a group of about a dozen people were standing with hand-painted signs. "Stop the slumlord! Bring back Ho Power!" Karen was right, and there at the center, bullhorn in hand, was Karen herself. Her face was red, hair wild, voice hoarse as she screamed into the megaphone. "This landlord destroyed our community. He silenced democracy. We demand justice." Neighbors peeked from windows and gathered on porches. Some whispered in disbelief, others shook their heads. Kids stood wide-eyed, unsure whether to laugh or be scared. I walked calmly down the path toward her. "Karen," I said firmly, "you're trespassing." She pointed the bullhorn at me like it was a weapon. "You can't silence us. We're taking our neighborhood back." The so-called protesters looked uneasy. It was clear they weren't locals, just random people she had paid to wave signs. Some even lowered their posters when they saw neighbors filming with their phones. "Karen," I repeated, my voice louder now, "this isn't your property anymore. You were evicted. This is harassment." The sound of sirens cut through the tension. 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up, lights flashing. The deputies stepped out, recognizing Karen instantly. One deputy sighed. "Karen, we warned you last time. You can't keep showing up here." Karen shrieked, "I have rights. They can't keep me out of my neighborhood." The deputy shook his head. "No, Karen, you don't. This is trespassing and unlawful assembly." The deputies moved in, dispersing the so-called protesters, who were all too eager to flee once they realized they'd been dragged into Karen's personal war. Karen fought, kicking and screaming as the deputies grabbed her arms. "No, you can't do this. I'm the president. I'm the president." Her voice cracked into sobs as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. The neighbors stood silently watching the scene unfold. Some looked sad. Most just looked relieved. As Karen was led to the cruiser, she turned her tear-streaked face toward me. "You'll regret this. They'll all regret this. I was the only thing keeping this place together." I didn't say a word. The door slammed, the cruiser pulled away, and Karen's voice faded into the distance. That night, the lake was quieter than ever. No shouting, no fake rules, no threats, just the sound of crickets and the gentle ripple of water against the shore. The neighbors gathered by the fire pit, relief etched on every face. One of the older residents leaned back and said, "It feels like we're free for the first time in years." I nodded, gazing across the dark lake where Karen's house once glowed with her false authority. "She built her empire on lies," I said quietly, "and empires like that always fall." The fire crackled, laughter rose, and for the first time, the lake truly belonged to the people who loved it, not the woman who tried to rule it. Weeks passed after Karen's dramatic arrest, and the lake settled into a peace most residents had never known. Without her constant interference, the neighborhood began to breathe again. The old widow down the road started planting flowers along her fence, no longer afraid Karen would find her for the wrong color blooms. Kids zipped down the dirt roads on their bikes, squealing with joy, free from Karen's clipboard threats. Families hosted cookouts by the water, their laughter echoing long into the evening. The lake wasn't just surviving without Karen, it was thriving. One afternoon, while walking along the shoreline, a young couple approached me. They had recently bought a small cabin and wanted to thank me. We almost didn't move here, the wife admitted. Karen scared us off at first. She told us we'd never fit in unless we paid her fees. But after we heard what happened, we realized this place was special, and it's because people stood up to her. Their words stuck with me. Karen had been so loud, so overbearing, that she almost convinced everyone she was the community. But, once she was gone, the truth became clear. The community had always belonged to the people, not her. From time to time, Karen's name still came up. Someone would joke, "Better hide the boat or Karen will find you," and the group would burst into laughter. But it was just that now, a joke, a memory. I did hear rumors she had tried starting another HOA scam in a different town, but word spread quickly and nobody fell for it. Karen had burned her reputation for good. One summer evening, the community gathered at the pavilion for a potluck dinner. Tables were covered in home-cooked food, kids splashed in the water, and music played softly in the background. As the sun dipped below the trees, one of the neighbors raised a glass. "Here's to our lake, stronger, freer, and happier than ever." Everyone cheered. I sat back, watching the golden light ripple across the water, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Karen had tried everything: fake rules, police lawsuits, media vandalism, even a stage protest. But in the end, she lost because she never understood what truly made a community: trust, kindness, and respect. And now she was gone. The lake had healed, and her name, nothing more than a cautionary tale told around campfires to remind everyone what happens when one person's greed collides with an entire community's strength.